Saludo, mi gente. Welcome to episode 28. You know what? Sometimes I think to myself, well, I have a lot of thoughts, but having said that, how to not be in just like heavy judgment of my own stuff, self compassion. But if I would imagine that if I would spend a whole host of time doing podcasts, I would have way more than 27. But anyways, I digress in my own challenge. So welcome to the House of Liberation podcast, episode 28. I am Kohene Iya, also known as Angelique. And I am all about liberation in a transparent, irreverent way. And my hope is that through these podcasts that have often been sporadic, you find hope, liberation, light, depth, just so many aspects that is part of the world I inhabit. Any toodaloo. So I wanted to talk about these days I've been pondering deeply, as is often the case with me. I feel like I say that so much, it's a little bit redundant, but whatever. Pondering about the challenge that we have re-accessing our capacities as humans to hold all the dimensions that we inhabit. And the reason that this had come up for me was because I was teaching a class in the prison, which is some contractual work that I do. And we were talking about purpose, vision, and planning. And it is very challenging as a priestess in these contexts to talk about things that to me are so connected to the metaphysical world, that are connected to cosmology, at least to me, that are connected to the mystery in terms of understanding your purpose, right? Like, what is the meaning? And bear with me, if you hear extra noises and sounds, it's because I am absolutely unequivocally multitasking. And I will not tell you what time it is, because then that'll probably set your knickers in a knot. But anyway, so if you hear extra noise, that's what's happening here. But because where I'm going back to the story, because of where I'm teaching, I also had to recognize for myself that, within the bounds of that contract, I cannot talk about spirituality in that way. But having this conversation around purpose, one of the participants in the class, rightly so, said he was struggling with like defining his purpose. And it made me reflect on back in the day, when I was really hungry to learn and grow and get tools that would help me do so and to be different. I was very connected to the idea of purpose. It's how I raised my kids with this, that we have more meaning in the world and that our impact is significant and important. And of course, with that type of subject came all the toxic stuff that comes with it. What I mean by that is that the ways that this idea of purpose becomes toxic is when it tries to become tightly defined. Not only tightly defined, but that you also see it as it kind of in the idea of putting all your eggs in one basket. You see this as the end all of your existence. And some of that can be really toxic and problematic because not all the time does a thing have meaning, although we're meaning making machines, right? So I think that being able to find your purpose in terms of understanding that every role that you play in your life is part of the reason why you're here. If we look at meaning, right, it's the reason why. Why to something? Why is it what it is? And what does it mean to us in terms of connection? So, in order to understand your meaning, your purpose, it is not something that you will find outside of yourself in terms of when you become fill in the blank, then you have significance and meaning. But it's really that whatever your life is, whether you're playing the role of a parent, whether you're playing the role of a caretaker, whether you're playing the role of a partner, romantic or otherwise, you name it, it is part of your purpose to infuse these roles and areas and spheres of influence, if you will, with all that you bring as a unique human. And that really the work is part of the work. Actually, let me say that part of the work is really about knowing who you are and knowing what brings you light and knowing, being in deep relationship with, that's what I mean by knowing, being in deep relationship with, tending and cultivating the characteristics, the values that you uniquely hold, the essence of your energy that you bring that is unique to you. It's not something that can be replicated. Again, this is back to the idea that you are a unique individual with your experience, with all of these pieces that bring forth a certain signature into the multiverse. And one of the things that wound up happening for this particular gentleman was that he just got stuck there. Like, what is my purpose? Because he saw his purpose in relation to one, it needs to be one thing, but he also saw it as something that he wants to become that he not yet is. And this is, to me, possibly one of the most painful things to witness is when we're in that particular struggle, because we are often imagining that our purpose, our significance is going to be found in some sort of construct, some sort of box that feeds the ideology that you are meaningful when you become a doctor, a lawyer, a thing like that, right? Like when you become a parent, then you're meaningful. When you fill in the blank, all these ideas that are really tiny, tiny, tiny concepts for humans to try to fit into. We're just not made or built for that. And so one of the things that was fascinating to me is realizing that he could not imagine the idea of purpose outside of his own reality, outside of his own inhabitation. And that reminded me of how thick and dense the spell of colonization, the spell of limitation in this dimension as created by humans, constructs, of oppression, how detrimental that is to our own understanding and also the true capacity that we all have to see our existence connected in a bigger way, right? I really believe that as human beings, we actually were born with the capacity to think about this dimension, the next dimension, the other timeline, the other lifetime, backward, forward, above, below, all directional, all multi-capable, if you will, of inhabiting that type of multiplicity. And the thing about that really anchors it home for me as a neurodivergent person, generally working with neurodivergent folk for the most part, our brains are actually a testament to the idea that we have the capacity to time travel. We have the capacity to manifest, generate, and create human design, people in the house, right? We have this enormous amount of capacity as, if you will, kind of what the operating system was already built for, and that our constructs in this dimension and the structures of oppression seek to create limitations based on the information that they're feeding in your reality, and whether you co-sign it or not. And there's a very thin line here, and this is a very nuanced conversation, especially when we start talking about oppression and its impact, because that is real. That is not a an invention in the way that it's somebody's imagination when they're experiencing it. Part of inhabiting all these multiplicities and all these realities and being in these dimensions is that you are going to feel the reality of this dimension, both the one you create and the one created, which is why we would timeline jump, which is why we would look at past lifetimes, which is why we are trying to understand every single thread of time as a portal, not the construct of 24 hours, right? But time as a portal of inhabitation, as a human inhabitation. You know, when we're looking at the matrix and all the pieces of the great weaving, the great tapestry, if you will, of the cosmos and our cosmology, a lot of that has to do with understanding that all things are real and all things are true, which we don't fucking like, right? Because we're so hyper and heavily conditioned to look at our dimension and look at this as the only reality, as the only possible way. And so as I was observing the behavior in the room around a sense of purpose, around a sense of vision, and why those things have become so hard, is because for the most part, they have been set up in such a way in this dimension and in this construct to be shaped by dominant ideas that for you to even imagine that your purpose is not something you seek out, but your purpose is something that you unfold, you cultivate and tend to inwardly, until you get that sensing that this way of being in this particular role that you're playing is generative for you. It lights you up. It feels good to you. So I think about often enough when I hear folks tell me, my goodness, I hear this more often than not, which is just so interesting to me anyway. But the idea of being deep, right? Or having tough conversations. And one of the things that's fascinating about that to me is before I would feel so fucked up about it. Literally, I would feel so shitty because I would feel like, is there something wrong with me that every time I'm in conversation with a person, they are feeling like I'm going deep, and I swear to the cosmos that I am not doing anything but having a conversation with the person, and the person feels feels like they can be heard in a way that they probably are not in other aspects of their lives. And so it just happens. No matter what I do, I could be talking about some random ass shit and it'll wind up in someplace deep. What I had to realize for me, well, one, as a neurodivergent person, my sensory experience of this world, both cognitively, emotionally, spiritually, all of those things, is that I feel deeply and I see through a lot of things. So my lens to see the world is distinct, and so is how I experience it. And rather than feeling shitty about how deep I am, which still cracks me up, because I don't particularly think it's a deep comparative to shallow conversation or small talk. But to me, I'm in the fullness of who I am as a person and what I bring. So part of my purpose is to bring this amount of depth and acknowledgement of grief and pain and things like that, and acceptance through my engagements. And this will happen with, and I always say this because for me, it was so important when I was younger to be a person who the things that I did in the world that the world said were life-changing for them also be the things that I give to my own family and my own children. And so for me, I am this way with my kids. I am this way with anybody. We have beautiful, deep, soulful conversations. Of course, we joke around, we shoot the shit, we make fun of so many things in terms of, right, like just really being able to laugh at life while simultaneously heavy doses of sarcasm, which really helps us. It's our version of humor. And so, I'm being myself, and in being myself, in being the way that feels most generative for me and aligned for me, is what I gift the world around me, in the same way that you do, in the same way that we all do. And to watch somebody struggle so deeply with the idea, it cannot possibly be that your purpose is already unfolding within your life. It has to be that your purpose is something else, especially when you're fighting with guilt and shame. Mostly shame, because shame tells you, and I really appreciate Brene Brown's work in terms of shame, because I think that we needed another reminder and an unfolding of what is the energetic quality and texture of shame. And shame is saying that you are bad, versus guilt is something that I did something bad, or embarrassment is something that looks more like it happens to everyone. And humiliation really is asking the fundamental question of, did I deserve this? And so often enough, the primary thing that we struggle with in terms of, this is the work of 4 self-conscious affects, kind of like how you become aware of things, right? Your own internal consciousness. And so shame is really a huge drive, because it fundamentally says that everything about you is wrong. When you're coming from that particular perspective, when you're coming from the place of you are empty, you are empty, and not only empty, but you're also bad, wrong, incorrect, all the synonyms you can think of. What tends to happen is that we can't see right in front of us the beauty that we bring, or the contribution that we bring, because in that spirit, we feel already that we don't have anything, because we don't possess anything, because that's what we heard about ourselves. And so watching this young guy struggle with the fact that his purpose couldn't possibly be something he's already inhabiting, because his life right now where it's at is not where he would want it to be at, which makes total sense. But at the same time, I remember in my early years, reading a bunch of productivity books, reading a bunch of character books. When I'm telling you, I read, I studied, I really enforce these principles in even my parenting, in terms of the importance of like character development and sense of purpose and shit like that. It was always the pressure of needing to become more and needing to do more type of thing, and not enough what is the inhabitation of that? What are the qualities? What is already there? And I have Charlotte Mason, and I've mentioned this before in some of my stuff. Charlotte Mason was an early English 19th century educator. And one of the things that I loved about her particular work, along with some others in which she kind of came up in as a teacher, she was a teacher, if I didn't say that already. What I love about her work that taught me early on in homeschooling my own kids, although because of my own conditioning, it became really challenging to really integrate this, was that children are not empty receptacles to be filled. And they are not like these containers that have no essence, no spirit, no purpose, no knowing of its own, right? As a being. And her work was that education is meant to be an experience, is meant to be, you're meant to be in relationship with it. And that to me was a powerful reframe of educating information and parenting as well. And I feel the same way about all these concepts around your purpose, even to speak, your core values, which I have, mine are listed right here. Mine are family, love, spirituality, passion, and beauty. Those are values, my top 5. Of course, there's more, right? But when we're looking at these words and when we're looking at all this language around self-development, so much of it is about reconditioning you toward a certain purpose or a certain end versus the work of highlighting and amplifying what's already there, and that what's already there just needs to be looked at and tended to with an enormous amount of wisdom, because you don't have to go anywhere else to find it. You don't have to become anybody else to have meaning and impact. You need to fully be yourself. And yourself is an essence, the internal essence of however you believe this. For me, it's the spark of the divine that dwells in each of us that already has a particular signature, energy, and beingness that doesn't need fixing. What tends to happen is because we're born into this reality and socialized into this world, what'll tend to happen is that when we are old enough, then and we wake up in terms of being allowed to be a conscious human. And I say allowed to be because often enough children are shut down. Their intuition is shut down. Their gifts are shut down. Their knowing is shut down. And so when you have that going on for a really long time, it becomes really difficult to honor and respect your own inner knowing when you've been told to surrender that or suppress it. And so our work then becomes to take off all those layers and all those masks of other people's realities, desires, and intentions, and purposes for that matter, because every person you meet is actually living out, whether in a way of adding and amplifying light or in a way of creating shadow to see things that need to be transformed. This person is operating in some of those already, and that is influencing your world. You are being shaped by something for sure. In order not to be, you would have to be somewhere in the woods, with no access to anything. But that's very few people get to have that experience. And so what happens with this is that what it does when we're not able to acknowledge our own essence, then we try to pretend that we're other people instead of the people that we are. And to me, so much of the work is being able to see what's already there inside of us instead of constantly needing to kind of absorb and take on and there's a word I'm looking for that's not coming to my mind right now, but this idea that you take everything in because you're so hungry to find what you mean or to find your purpose or to find your sense of self. Your appetite becomes voracious, right? And so you'll just take in a lot. That's what I wanted to say. And so for me, the piece around this that is really powerful is, hold on a minute. You're looking in the incorrect place for yourself. The place that you have to come back to is inside of you. The place you have to come to are things like, what are the qualities that you inhabit, the energy that you inhabit, that you bring to everything you do? And what is not only the quality of it, but the texture of it? Like, how does it feel? What I mean by that is you want to be observing. You usually can tell this is depending, because I get, as a manifesting generator, I get a lot of, and line 5-1, I get a lot of projections. So I cannot count on people's reflections of me for the most part in some ways, because I said for the most part in some ways. What the fuck was that? For the most part, because I have to sift through what's a projection and what is an actual seeing and noticing of me. The difference in that is that somebody may say to me, which I've heard, right? Somebody will be like, oh, your energy is so nurturing, so mother-like, right? That thing, which absolutely, yes. That's an energy that that I can inhabit. And at the same time, there are other aspects of me that are not just about that thing, but somebody will highlight that thing because it's what they're seeing and needing of my energy, what they need my energy to be for them. So it's not actually about seeing me for the totality of who I am. It's about seeing me for what they may need from me. And deciphering between those two are things that, like, I've stopped spending time doing. And I'm saying that to say that sometimes you can gather that type of information from the people around you that can say, you know what, you're passionate, or you know what, you always make me laugh. You know what, when you're around, I feel just so fill in the blank, right? You can harvest some of that in a way of better understanding what quality you're bringing. And that can help you identify kind of your purpose in the world, your meaning, what you bring and how meaningful it is for yourself and others in this world have a lot to do with your personality and your essence, how easygoing you may be, or how exciting and energetic you may be. Because those things actually allow us to say, oh, I understand. I don't necessarily have to do a thing for people, but I get to be this expression and share it in all these different roles that I am in. And that my purpose, my meaning is to share all these beautiful quirks and beauty and personality and character, essence, really your essence, to share it with every aspect of my life. Now, here's where you can have some specificity around this, which I think specificity is, important and powerful, because I can look at my purpose and go, okay, what is the thing that brings me most joy? I love, personally, right? My thing is, it's so important for me for people to feel accepted, to feel valued, to really inhabit like enoughness, the energy of enoughness. And so when I'm around people, or when I'm thinking of my spheres of influence, the places that I have connection, I'm aware that what I want to bring, my purpose is to bring these things to everything, right? My purpose is to bring a sense of acceptance. My purpose is to bring, to hold space, for really deep transformational things. My purpose is to notice beauty and highlight beauty, and highlight something as simple as a flower and the beauty of that, or the sun coming through the door, right? Like, these particular things that so light me up are the things that are my purpose to infuse this world with. This is why your unique self and your unique expression is so important, because it's part of the fabric, it's part of the tapestry, it's part of the great weaving that will continually heal us, right? When we're exposed to different energetic essences, like the essence of a flower, if you use flower essences, right? Like, or the core expression of any particular thing, that is all a unique signature, and that we need, because it will resonate for some other being, right? Not just a human being, but trees and flowers and herbs and rocks and oceans, all of these things, all of these beings, that sentient beings are relatives, the stars, all of it, they are in connection with us as much as we are with them. And we also are imprinted with their energy, and them with us. This is all relationship. So what does become important is to identify what are the energetic signatures of your essence as a person. It'll show up in the way you dress. It'll show up in the way, whatever you think is important. It'll show up in something as simple as how you put food on a plate, right? There's like no limit to the ways that you as a human bring something beautiful to contribute to our great humanity, and to the amplification and the elevation of all that is beautiful in this universe, right? In this multiverse. And so I thought it would be great to do a small podcast on this and just talk a little bit about it, because I think the idea behind it makes sense in terms of noticing, like, what would be the most meaningful inhabitation of this lifetime. That's a great question to live with, to be like, oh, as I'm here in this lifetime, in this expression, with this reality, this body, etc., this is actually what I'm sensing the most. This is actually what I want to like amplify and put out, like Care Bear shit. You know what I mean? The Care Bears from the 80s. They would just like stand and their light would come out of their belly, which sounds really creepy right now, but makes total sense energetically, right? Um, Coming from your center energy system, your connection to all humanity. And so really taking the time to identify the things that you value and that are important to you and that you inhabit and you are. There's some people that inhabit tenderness and gentleness with such exquisite capacity that I love being around tender and gentle folks, because that is so nourishing to me. You see, and if they would deny that tenderness, and this is how you know some of the pieces of yourself that are so holy, so sacred, because it's the things that you have had to protect and the places where you've had most wounding. It is the things that you have had to protect. This is where we get all these walls, this armor that we put up, the things you have had to protect and the things where you have experienced your deepest wounding. And it really, really comes from this place of your most sacred expression of your being. Right? So let's say as a child, you were super quiet or you were super reflective and introspective, an introvert, and you could have been ostracized because you inhabit silence well. You and silence are like, kin in that way. And you may have been deeply wounded for that. But yet that's part of the gift that you bring to the world, is that you know how to be a sacred witness. A sacred witness in observation and reflection of the world around them. That means that you are also most likely a good listener, because talking or expressing in that particular way is not how you show up in your hugest vibration, right? And so that allows you to really identify the places that you have been arguing for. So my thing is, I have this theory around this idea that everybody is asking a question. They're living with a series of questions inside, right? And we're looking for answers to those questions, whatever they are. Why am I here? Or something like, what's my purpose? Or how can I be different? Or how can I belong? Right? Just a series of questions around your beingness and your personhood. And that the way you live your life is actually some of the things that you actually think are the answer to those questions. And in that same way, we want to be able to say, okay, what are the questions that I've been asking? Right? So for me, some of those things are, well, how do I function in this dimension and in this world with the brain that I have? And finally being able to actually realize that my brain is different and that's why I'm different, right? Like there's these things that, so before when I was younger, because I didn't understand quite well mental health or neurodivergence for that matter, the question for me was, well, why can't I do all these things that I'm supposed to, quote unquote, air quotes, right? That I'm supposed to be doing. Why can't I get up at 6 a.m.? Why can't I stay consistent with something over a long time, right? Am I lazy? Am I inconsistent? And do I lack character? And living with those type of questions, then the answers that I'm trying to find is it a planner? Is it organizational system? Is it a character, a character value issue? So I would, read the things on the subjects that I was trying to fix and or trying to understand better about myself. And that is what actually led me to the understanding that we are all living with questions, and that what our lives actually become are the sum of those type of answers. And that sometimes the answers that we find are actually not the answers to the question, because the question that you're asking may not be the question that you need to be asking. Once again, the answers that you have found for the questions that you're asking may not be the answers, because the questions that you're asking are not the questions that you need to be asking. And rather than how can I be better? Rather than what do I need to fix because I'm broken? What do I need to solve because I'm a problem? Rather than that type of questioning, to me, the most powerful and generative questioning is, what am I already? Who am I already? Who am I already? Not that I need to become better. I need to become more fully myself, because when I'm more fully myself, in relationship to my brain, in relationship to my body, in relationship to my age, all of those things, then I am able to give myself more wholly and fully and be present as myself. Because the thing that I came here to contribute, among many, is to be fully myself. And that thing, it came with the operating system. It's not some sort of extra shit you buy, some sort of add-on package, some sort of, that's not how that works. You yourself as a human being already came extraordinarily and marvelously packaged for the piece you are going to play in being an expression of the divine, being an expression of the cosmos, however you see that. That right there, to me, is the cornerstone of anything that we are building, that we are creating in our realities, is that you are fucking magic. The moment you become this unfurling fern-like organism in the body of another human, and you begin to develop, is the minute the operating system is on board and came already with. So if anything, I hope that you can walk away from this podcast knowing and deeply understanding you already have inside of you what you need in order to be the fullest expression of yourself. Our external world is really the place of tending and cultivating, but the magic that you inhabit is what you will infuse everything you tend and cultivate. And that, my friends, my beloved ones, that is the magic of purpose. That it is already there, already underneath the hood. Everything that you are is already there. So, until next time, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to spread it and amplify it. The more folks that can rest and anchor in this understanding, the more beautiful we make the world that we live in moment by moment. So don't forget, if you want to book a reading with me, if you want to book a session with me, a Lech Lecha session, which is the Hebrew for going for yourself. It's the idea of meeting at the crossroads of where you're at right now. And if you wanted to sit down, and it's a mix of alchemy, it's a mix of taking all these moments and transforming so that the road clears up as you move forward. If you want to book a session, you can head to the website, thehouseofliberation.com. You can also social media, of course, Instagram, YouTube, And Facebook, you can find me under the same name, The House of Liberation. And yeah, please share and subscribe. The most powerful way my work has ever gotten out and among folks is word of mouth, which to me is really the only way I want to be in movement, really. Because nothing speaks more powerfully than when people share experiences. And so there's that. Also, Patreon. If you want to join Patreon, you can also find me at the House of Liberation if you want to be in solidarity with the work that I'm called to be doing and showing up doing. And in there, I often, as much as I can, no promises here. But solidarity should never have strings attached. So I'm just going to say that there. On the other side of that, I try to do new moon and full moon readings, and then any other tidbits. There'll be some changes coming up ahead. But if you want to join us in there, you're welcome to join us in the House of Liberation on Patreon. Oh shit, I keep on forgetting. Like the tiers start at I think $2 and move on up from there, and so definitely accessible. And things again will be changing in the future, but for now, that's where you can find me much more personally versus trying to hit me up on social media or Facebook. So where you can really get me at is either in Patreon or booking a session with me. So, hasta luego. That was a long ass close, but I hope you are well. Wishing you badass blessings, and may you be enough always. Hasta luego.